Let's do it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Richards.
Hi.
We are going to be recording this training presentation by Distinguished Toastmaster Tamala Takahashi, and she will be presenting a tutorial on how to manage and work with pathways so that you can get started in the program, or if you have already started and you have questions, we can proceed with those. Everyone should see that there's a chat window that will pop up if you click on the chat button. If you are interested in getting the proper link, send me your email in the chat window and I will send you an email with that correct link, because if you can see the screen, it will benefit you. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and let Tamala take over. Go ahead, Tamala. And by the way, my name is Mark Richards, and I'm hosting the meeting.
Thank you. And if you could mute everybody, that'd be great, Mark. Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
If anyone would like to unmute themselves to ask a question, that's fine. Or it's probably a little easier to type it in the chat window if you're on the computer. But if you're on the phone, you can unmute to ask a question.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. Tonight, we're going to be talking about pathways and doing a walkthrough through the first steps of starting with pathways. For most of you here, you probably have poked around in pathways, and you could probably have found out that there's a lot.
Sorry, Tamala. Oh,
that's okay.
yeah,
I unmuted myself. There's a lot going on in pathways. There's a lot to click on. There's a lot to look at. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look only at the absolute minimum you need to know in order to get through your first level and into your second level. We are going to look at all the other bells and whistles of the Pathways program because they can be a little overwhelming and distracting. And once you get through the first level and into the second level and you get comfortable with how the program works, it'll be much easier then to poke around and look at what Pathways has to offer otherwise. And frankly, when you're first starting in Toastmasters, all you need is those first few projects in level 1 to get started, and that will help you get on your way in the program. So tonight we're going to go over a few things. We're going to go over how to log in to Pathways and get started, how to work on a project and how to finish that project. Then we're going to talk about how to finish a level once you've done all the projects in the level. And we're going to go over very briefly at the end how to, as a Basecamp manager, how to approve the level if you're an officer of your club. So a brief overview of Pathways is that there are 11 paths that you can choose from. And in each path, there are 5 levels. And I'll show you some more detail in a bit about that. Of the 5 levels, in each level, there's several projects. And each project, there's several items to do in that project. So we're going to go through each of those bits so you can see how that all works out. And working through the program is working through the levels in Pathways. So to start the program, you're going to go to the first screen of toastmasters.org, which you see here on the shared screen. And you're going to go to the login button to log in. And that login is the same login ID that you'll use for your main Toastmasters account. And if you're a Toastmasters officer, it's the same login you use to go to your officer account as well. You log in. And then once you're logged in, you select on the menu Pathways. And I recommend going straight to Basecamp. These other things are potentially going to lead you to the right place, but if you go to Basecamp, that will lead you directly to where you need to go. If you haven't chosen a path yet and you say go to Basecamp, it will let you choose a path. So I recommend just clicking on go to Basecamp. So this is generally the screen you're going to see when you go to Basecamp. If you have not chosen your path yet, it may come up with a screen to have you go directly there. And if that's the case, you can choose your path. And what choosing your path is basically it's a quiz that will ask you a number of questions about what your goals are in Toastmasters, what you'd like to do at work or in your personal life or in your community. And then it will use those answers to determine which path it thinks you are most likely going to enjoy. It will give you 3 results for that path, and you can choose one of those paths if you like. But if you decide that that's not one of the paths you want and you want to choose a different path, you can exit out of that and choose a different path. It's fine. And if you already have done a path or you're already in the middle of a path, you can take the quiz again to do a second path. Now, every member who joins, initially when you first join, you get 1 free path. You can buy additional paths on top of that if you'd like to for $20 each. But the first path is free. If you are a member that's been here since before July 2018, you were in more than one club in July 1st, 2018, you can get 2 paths for free. But if you were not in more than one club, you just get 1. And any new member just gets 1. And any additional path is $20. So you can do that quiz again if you'd like, or you can just sign up for another path. So I'm not going to go through that quiz of the path. You can look at that yourself. It's pretty self-explanatory. But if you have any questions, you can email me later. And my email was included in the email that the district sent out. And you can type it in there in the chat window if you want to, Mark, my email address.
I'm sorry, say again?
My email address, if you want to type it in there for people.
Yeah, sure thing, we'll do.
This middle one that says access my path through Basecamp, that is where the majority of your clicking will reside throughout your entire career in Pathways. This window here allows you to get to your materials in Pathways. Now, looking at my screen, you'll notice that it has 2 buttons, go to Basecamp and log in as Basecamp manager. That top button, go to Basecamp, that's the button that will lead me to my personal path and Pathways, and with the button I will be pushing in a minute. But I wanted to point out the login as Basecamp manager button. That button appears because the club that I have selected here, I am the president of that club currently. And as the president, I have access to Basecamp manager, which is where I can approve the other members' path through Pathways. I will show you that button a little bit later. But for now, going to Basecamp will just lead me to my personal path and Pathways. So that's what I'm going to select.
Your email is not in the email that was sent out, but I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, strange.
I'll type it in.
But I'm gonna put it in there if you. I'll do it right now.
Okay.
Let me see.
So if you go into Pathways, or you click onto that button to bring you into your Basecamp, it may ask you to go through this tutorial, and you can do that if you like. I'm going to close it though. And I'll talk about in a minute why I still see the tutorial even though I've been on Pathways a million times. So in this, this is your Basecamp splash page here, and this is where the buttons that you would push to get to access all of your materials. I recommend when you first start to only click on this one button here, Education Transcript, Access My Path. That is where I recommend you stay for the first level or 2 until you get very familiar with how this works. And then once you're familiar, you can start clicking around to other things. This education transcript here will lead us to a page that will show everything that you've done in Pathways. But if you go a little bit lower on the page, you'll notice down here this box that has a red striped title at the top. That box is actually the same thing you'd see if you clicked on this button, or at least the top 5 listings of the things that you have done. This way, you don't have to actually go to a separate page. You can go directly to your program if you want to from this quick link box here. But I am going to click on this button, Education Transcript, Access My Path, just so you can see what it looks like. When you click on it, you will notice a list of everything you've ever clicked, basically, in Pathways. My list is not very long because I've only clicked on a few things, but I've seen some lists that have about 20 or 30 different things listed here because there's a lot to click in Pathways. And it can get a little confusing about what's actually required and what's just information. What you want to focus on in the beginning in order to move through your program are your paths. And there are several paths you could have chosen. And the one that you know whether it's your path or not is if you go over to the right here, it says open curriculum. That's going to be your path. And it's going to have the same title as the path you chose in the quiz. If you've never done it before, it might say launch or something else, but once you've clicked it once and looked at it once, it'll say open curriculum from then on. So my paths are dynamic leadership and visionary communication. So those are my two paths. And this mentor program is a path that it's a kind of a side path that opens up later on in the program. So you don't have to worry about that right now. You won't see it. You won't see it till you get to level 3. But to start off with, your paths, whatever you choose, will have an open curriculum button, and that's the one that you want to click. So if you have other things on your list, you're not sure which one to click, the open curriculum will give you a hint. Okay, but I'm going to go back a page so we can link to it directly from that quick link box so you can see what that looks like. Because most of the time when I use Pathways and when people who have been using Pathways for a while use it, we don't click on this button. We use this education transcript quick link box instead because it's faster. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my dynamic leadership curriculum. Right. As you can see, when you look at my dynamic leadership curriculum, I have 5 levels, 3 of which that I've completed. And you can tell I've completed them because there's little check boxes there. We're looking right now at level 1. In level 1 of my dynamic leadership path, I have 3 projects. And this last box here is what opens up when you finish all your projects. So it's not a project itself, it's just letting you know you're done. When you first start any path, this level 1 looks exactly the same for everybody. You have an icebreaker, evaluation and feedback project, researching and presenting project. And when you very first start, all you're going to see is the icebreaker project. Nothing else will be available for you to do. Icebreaker will be the only thing that's open. So we're going to go ahead and look at the icebreaker so you can see what it looks like. When you're interested in going into the project, you go over to the button here and you'll click on launch or whatever that wording is. Sometimes it changes the wording depending on where you are in the project, but usually it says launch. Now this is a place where it can be a little bit of a tricky bit. And most of it's technology. And hold on just one second while I switch to this new window. Okay, so now you should see a different page that says you and your goals on it. So what happens sometimes when you hit the launch button is that this will not show up, this box will not show up. And that's usually a problem with technology. So I'm going to go back in a little bit and show you how to rectify that. So if you are going along right now and you are not seeing this launch, hold on, watch this walkthrough, and then we'll go back in a minute and we will go through how to get that to come up, okay? So this box here is what you'll see. And this is usually what you'll see in the beginning. Either this navigation window or introduction. I can't remember which one comes up first. I think it's navigation. Okay. So when you first start launching the project, your very first project, the icebreaker, you'll see this window. And it's not immediately obvious what to do because very often this window, when it's launched, it's not big enough. It doesn't show everything. So it shows you how to, it gives you these little instructions, but the actual things that you would click, I'm trying to click and nothing's happening. The actual thing you want to click is not showing. So what you have to do is take the corner of your window, which I'm doing with my little mouse right now, and make it bigger and bigger and bigger until you can see the actual little arrows on the sides. And you can see this pull down menu at the bottom. Once you can see all those 3 elements, that's when your window's big enough that you can see the entire pop-up. And this is something that Toastmasters knows is a problem, so they're working on it. But in the meantime, part of this training is to let you know a few of the glitches so that if you're training somebody else in your club or you're sharing or you're trying to get it to work on your computer and it's not working, you'll know some of the common problems. So that's one of the most common problems. is that when you launch the window for your first path or any of your paths, that it's too small, you can't see the arrows, and it's not clear what to do. So if you expand the window out and you can see these arrows, these are the arrows that you will use to navigate through the program. Okay. So actually, let me navigate back. Actually, this is the splash page that comes up here. So the icebreaker. When you first start a new project, it comes up with this page that gives you the title and the level you're on, and then a little begin button. Okay. So to navigate through the projects are these little arrows here. Now remember, just to reiterate, we have 5 levels per path, and in each level, there's a number of projects. And within each project, there's items that you'll be doing, and I'm going to show you that right now. So there's there's pathways, there's levels, and then within the levels, there's numerous projects, and within the projects, there's bits to go through, which I'm going to show you right now. Okay, I'll review this again at the end. So each project has several elements, and I'm going to go through the elements now. But to navigate through the elements are these arrows. And you can do a quick navigation with the drop-down menu here. So there's an introduction with the project and what you're doing, what the purpose of the project is, a little bit more about it. Now, you may have noticed here that there's a little bit at the bottom that popped up that says directions. That happens sometimes. And if this pops up, the way after you've read the material, the way that you remove this from your screen and get back to the project is you click on the little blue box, and that makes it go away. If you want it to come back, you click on again to come back. Okay. So the beginning of every project has this page that says your assignment, and it gives you a project checklist. I recommend every time that you start a project that you print out this project checklist. It is a short version of everything that you need to do for the project. After you've printed that out, you can keep going through the material with these arrows. After that bit that's called the assignment, your assignment, there's almost immediately after, there's almost always a quiz. Somewhere along the way in the beginning, there's a quiz. And this is a pre-project self-reflective quiz for you to answer the questions to give yourself an idea of where your strengths and potential weaknesses are. There's usually 5 or 6 questions. In this one, it's 6. And you will answer all the questions based on a number 1 through 5. Now, here's another sticky bit that sometimes can cause confusion, is that normally we navigate with these little arrows, but for these quizzes, within the quiz itself, you navigate using the back and next button. So in order to get to the next question here, we don't click on this little arrow, we click on the next button. To get to the next question, answer that, go to the next question, answer that, etc. And then when you get to the last question and you answer it, then you can move on to the next section of this project. Now, it's important to answer all these questions because there are only a few things to do within each module that the computer requires you to do in order to get credit for doing this project. And this quiz is one of those things. So make sure you do the quiz, and that way the computer knows that you finished it, and then you can move on. Okay? So now that we finished the quiz, we'll move on to the actual project. And generally in the projects, they give you some information about what you're working on. They'll give you little videos maybe, or they'll give you checklists. There's different things that you can read through. And these are basically training materials to help you understand what you're working on. In this particular project, the icebreaker, there's a very important worksheet called the Icebreaker Speech Outline Worksheet. And I've received this question a few times about how do I know how to structure my speech? How do I know how to write my speech? This Icebreaker Speech provides the speech outline worksheet, and that's the one that you'll basically use for all the other projects. There may be a couple projects a little bit later that have different outlines, maybe for storytelling or something else. But for most of your speeches, you will use this outline to help you write your speeches until you get comfortable with the speech writing process. If you're already comfortable with the speech writing process, you can use whatever speech writing outline you'd like. But for somebody who's brand new to speeches or who wants more guidance, this is the outline that Pathways uses. So if any of your members asks, where do I find out how to write an outline of a speech? This is where you'll go back to the icebreaker for this particular worksheet. Okay, and print that out or look at it online. More information about the icebreaker, how to put it together, some more information here. When you're going through the projects, you may come across this kind of format where you've got several rectangles that are blue and red. If you see that, that generally means there's information to be clicking on here. And that's also more information you can look at for training. Okay, more information to go through. Okay. I'm just trying to find one page I'm looking for. I'm looking for the evaluation sheet. I must have passed it accidentally. Oh no, I didn't get far enough. Okay, so if you keep going through far enough, you get to a page that is the evaluation resource. So every project has an evaluation resource. And that is also something that you will want to print out and have on you for your speech. Every project has at least one speech. And for that speech, the evaluation resource is the sheet that you will use for your evaluator to give you an evaluation in your club. So that's the one you want to print out and give to your evaluator. So this is where you'd stop, and you would then go do your speech. You'd print out the evaluation, go do your icebreaker, get your evaluation, and then once that happens, you'll come back to this project, launch it. It'll still be on this page. If you stay there, it'll still be there when you come back. You'll launch it again, and then you'll move to the rest of the project. To wrap it up, and here, you'll see a second quiz. And the second quiz comes at the very end of everything else you do within the project. So it's after any kind of leadership tasks you have to do or any speeches you have to do. This quiz will come after all of that. And again, it's a 6-question quiz. It's the same 6 questions as before. You answer the questions using the navigation buttons next and back and go through and answer each of them. And once you've answered all 6, there will be a little button that pops up that says, I think, submit. And when you click on that, it will pop up with this window that compares both the first quiz and the second quiz. That's how the computer knows that you've finished your project. If you don't do those 2 quizzes, the computer thinks you're not done yet. So in order for the computer to get the message that you've finished that project, you have to do both quizzes. And when this window pops up to compare the 2, that's a signal to the computer, to the Pathways computer program, that you've finished the project. And so then you're ready to move on to the last page, which is, congratulations, you're all done with your project. Now, this is the last page of a project. Every project has this congratulations page at the end. And this is another sticky bit potentially. It's not always clear what to do at this point. There's no more buttons, there's no more indicators. What you do here is you simply go to the close window button on your browser and close the window, okay? But before we do that, I'm going to switch it back to the other screen so that doesn't close on me. All right, so I'm closing the window now. I'm taking you back to the other screen, okay? And when you do that, what you should see when you come back is that the icebreaker project now will have a little check next to it, meaning you've completed it. If you close the window and you come back to this page and there's no check there, what that means is one of those 2 quizzes didn't get completed or didn't get submitted. So you can launch it again, go back to those quizzes and make sure that those are completed, okay? So to review, the icebreaker project and all of the other projects follow the same pattern. First, you launch the project, then you download or print out the project checklist. You read through the material to get the training. Actually, sorry, I skipped a part. I'm sorry, I'll start over. You launch the window, you download the project checklist, you do the first quiz all the way through and submit it. Then you do the material in the middle that explains all the training and what you're working on. Get to the page where it says evaluation worksheet, print that out, and then do your speech. Come back, go to the next page where the second quiz is, fill out the second quiz, then go to the last page and close the window. Okay, so launch, project checklist, first quiz, material in the middle, evaluation worksheet, second quiz, finish up and close the window. Okay, so that's every project's like that. And there will be different things in the middle, and there may be multiple stages in the middle, but the end caps of it are the same for all of them, okay? So just to show you how that works, I'm gonna launch evaluation and feedback. So you can see how that one is similar. It's loading. Yes, the answer is that the Toastmasters launching your module, your project is slow. It's a slow thing. While it's loading, I'm going to talk about, oh, there it is. Okay, so that's the end of it. So we go back to the beginning. So evaluation and feedback is the next project. And it has the same stuff where you go to the project checklist page, print out your checklist, have your quiz. This one has 7 questions. You do all your quiz, go through all the material, et cetera, et cetera. Gives you different things. And then your evaluation resource. Okay. Now remember, some projects have multiple stages. This is one that has multiple stages. And so there's 3 evaluation resources for each of the stages of the project. Okay. And then when you're done with all 3 of those parts, then you do the end quiz. Then you do the congratulations page. Okay, so it's the same for every project. It's just the middle parts are different. Okay, go back to this screen here with the listing of all your projects. I want to point out that when you first start your first level of your first path, the only thing you see is Icebreaker. Nothing else is open to you. But once you finish the Icebreaker project, both the evaluation and feedback and the researching and presenting projects, both of them open up. So what I recommend is launching both of them, not simultaneously, but do one and then the other, and print out all of the project checklist and print out the evaluation forms, because sometimes it's hard to do both projects in order, and it's good to get into the habit of printing out all the material so you can plan ahead your entire level. This at level 1, it's not as important. You can do it serially and you probably won't take too much time. But as you get into later levels, some of the projects have multiple stages that will be overlapping each other as you do them. So it's important to have all of your projects printed out and you understand all the different stages, so that while you're working on maybe running an event over here, you can do a speech on another project over here at the same time. You're doing them all together. And I find that's helpful because sometimes as you get to later levels, it can take a long time to get through a project. So it's good to be working on another project while that one takes a little while to finish up, especially if you have to do something outside of your club. So just a thought to do that. But they do open up to you once you finish the Icebreaker. When you first start the path, only level 1 is open to you. And level 2 will not be open to you until you finish all of these projects and you complete your level 1. So after you finish icebreaker and that gets a little check mark, you can move on to these two, work on all those elements. And once those are all done, you get those 2 check marks and you have 3 check marks. This last one opens up and you can click the button to say complete level 1. Okay. Now, before we move on to the next section, I wanted to point out one more thing, which is the check compatibility button, which we talked about earlier about what happens if you push launch and there's nothing works. Check compatibility is the area where you go if there's anything that technology-wise is not working. You can't get a button to work, something's not loading, you're getting an error, anything like that. The first thing I recommend is going to check compatibility. And what that does is it takes you to a page that looks at your computer settings and your browser settings and makes sure that everything is working properly. And anything that's not set up properly will show up red. Okay. So 99.9% of the time that the pop-up window doesn't work, it's because pop-up blockers is on. And if it's red, you can click on it and it'll show you the step-by-step process of how to turn off your blockers to allow pop-ups to come up. And most of the time it'll show you how to do it specifically just for this website so that you don't end up allowing pop-ups for everything, just for the Toastmasters website. But since mine is green, it doesn't give instructions. But if yours is red, it'll give instructions. You'll notice that my cookies are red, and this gives instructions on how to turn on my cookies. So for those of you who aren't familiar with cookies, what cookies are is it basically is a bit on the Toastmasters website that keeps track of everything that I do while I'm on their website. And that's helpful to allow the Pathways program to remember my progress, since I don't have to repeat things. But I found for the most part that having cookies off doesn't really affect me. And I just generally don't like to use cookies on the internet, so I leave it off. But that's why the tutorial keeps coming up, because it thinks I haven't gone through the tutorial because it doesn't remember. So I just turn off the tutorial. If having the tutorial bothers you and you want to turn your cookies on, that's fine, not a big deal. But I have found that having cookies off doesn't really affect my experience in Pathways, but it's up to you either way. If you find something's not working, you could try turning on your cookies and see if that helps. I use Safari on a Macintosh, on an Apple, and cookies doesn't seem to make a difference. But maybe in another browser, or maybe on a different computer, it might, or on a tablet, it might matter. Okay, so we're gonna go back. And before we move on to how to submit your level, I just want to find out if there's any questions that anybody has about the path, the levels, the projects, or anything inside the projects.
Amy, this is Lance. Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Lance.
Hi. I'm the Vice President of Education, and I submitted something, and I don't think my president knows. Would it automatically go to him to approve?
Good question. So the 3 Basecamp managers are president, vice president of education, and secretary. Those are the only 3 people who have access to approve your level. Now, when you complete a level and you click that button that says complete level 1, what happens is it sends an email out to the person who is the official contact person for your club. And that's pulled from the Toastmasters.org website. Now, if that person happens to be your VPE, that's who it's going to go to. But it may not be. It may be somebody else. So you want to make sure that the person that who is your official contact, that they are checking their email. But what I suggest is not to rely on the automatic system. I suggest that if you finish a level and you click finish level, to contact your VPE directly, either email or phone or text or in person, and let them know that it's waiting for them to go approve it.
So since I'm the VP, in this case, I would contact the president or the secretary.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm also the secretary, so.
Yeah, so be the president, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good thing you're not all 3 or you wouldn't be able to do it at all.
Then I would call TI.
Right. Yeah, so the email does go out to somebody, but who it goes to will depend on who the official contact is on your club. That is also something Toastmasters is aware of, and it's on the list of things that they're trying to fix, but it has to do with how The Toastmasters.org website and the Pathways website are completely different servers and completely different systems. So there's only a few touch points that they have with each other. And so it has to do with how those two computer systems communicate with each other. And for whatever reason, that's where they they pull the information from, is the official contact person for that club.
One other quick question.
Yeah.
Every time you start a new path, you have to do an icebreaker again, even if you've been a Toastmaster for 20 years?
Yes, you do. Every time you start a new path, you do level 1 again, and level 1 is exactly the same for every path. And level 2, as I'll show you here, is fairly similar for each path. I think there's 4 projects that are shuffled around. So of the 4, you get 3 in each path. So they all kind of look similarly. So the first 2 levels are going to be basically repeats when you do your second path. It's up to you if you want to do the same speech again, or if you want to do a different speech. The program doesn't give you guidance that way. You can make that decision.
Okay.
But it's good to go back and do basics again, and it gives an opportunity to maybe do a speech again, or try some new material or something. So,
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to move on to submitting a project. Now, like I already had told Lance, is that when you're done with your project, the button will say submit. I think it's submit or complete project. And when you click that, it will send an email to the contact of the club. Now, if you're in one club only, you're a member of one single club, this is a straightforward process. You basically let the club president, VPE, or secretary know that you submitted your level, and you will not be able to move on into the next level until they go into their base camp, which I'll show in a little bit, and approve your level. When they approve your level, you will immediately be able to move on to the next level. Okay. So for me, I have 3 levels completed that somebody has gone in and has submitted for me and has approved. And so now I'm on level 4. And I cannot move to level 5 until I've completed level 4 and got that approval from one of my officers. Okay. Now, that's the direct, simple, straightforward way. But if you're in more than one club, if you're in 2 clubs or more, it's a little bit more effort. So if you're in more than one club, you will have to go back to that page that has the drop-down menu. Let's see if I can get it back here. This one here. This page here has a drop-down menu of your clubs that you're in. Now, if you're in only one club, it won't show this. But if you're in more than one club, it will show this drop-down menu, and you will have to pick which club you want to submit your level to. So basically, if I were to finish a level right now, how I have it set is that I would have to contact the officers of my past district governors club in order to get the approval. If I want to do it quickly, let's say I know that my VPE of the Media City Toastmasters Club, for example, is very responsive. And when I text him, he gets back to me within a couple hours. It's just kind of how he does his work. So I know that if I submit it now at 8 o'clock at night, and where I were to text him, he probably would submit my level tonight or tomorrow morning. So I am deciding to choose Media City Toastmasters instead of my other club. And then I would submit it, my level, I would complete it, and then I would ask him to approve it for me. If I have the other club selected, I have to call my other VPE or president. Actually, since I'm the president of that club, I have to call my VPE or secretary. So it's important to know, if you're in more than one club, it's important to know which club you're logged in at, so that you know which team of officers to contact to ask for that approval to get going on the next level, okay? And you'll notice too, when I selected Media City Toastmasters, that base camp manager button went away. And when I go back to my past district governors club, it comes back, okay?
Another question, if I may.
Sure.
So I belong to 3 clubs. I'm in one path.
Yes.
I can, and I started that path in, let's say, Club X, as opposed to Club Y and Club Z. If I want to do something for another club, start another path, for example, then is that how it works? I have to start another path for another club?
No, the path belongs to you personally,
Okay.
not to your club. So you can work on one path in multiple clubs if you want to. You can do your icebreaker in Club X, and you can do your project number 2, the evaluation and presenting project in Club Y, and you can do your the other project, I forget what it was called now, top of my head. You can do that in Club Z.
How does Toastmasters know which club gets the credit for which level?
So we'll talk about credit in a minute, but for you personally, it doesn't matter which club you do it in, as long as you select the club that's going to be the most responsive in giving you approval. So when you submit it, you do have to pick a club to be the club that you submit it to, and they're the ones who need to approve it. And we'll talk a minute about how the club gets credit for it. But that specifically is, that's how you choose which club will approve it. But there's no requirement that you do all the projects in the same club. You can spread them out. You can actually even be a guest at another club and do a speech there, or you can do a number of your speeches outside of Toastmasters altogether. So you don't have to do it all in one club. But some members do decide, if they're in multiple clubs, they decide, okay, I'm going to work on my path, this path in Club X, and I'll work on this path in Club Y. And you can do that too if you want to, but you're not required by Pathways to do that.
In any district?
Yep, any district, anywhere in the world. And like I said, you can even do a number of your speeches outside of Toastmasters. I don't know how many. I think it's 1 speech per level, if I remember correctly. But there's some things that you will actually have to do outside of a club because of the nature of the project. So there's a project, for example, that is make a podcast, or do a workshop in front of like more than 30 people or something like that. And sometimes that has to be done outside of a Toastmasters club in order to accomplish it. Okay. So you don't have to do any of these projects in any particular club, but when you submit it, you do have to know which club you're submitting it to.
Okay.
Okay.
There's also a panel discussion. Of course, that would probably most likely be outside of Toastmasters. There's write a blog. That requires obviously working on the computer. So you're absolutely right. Wanted to mention one thing, if I could, Tamala.
Yeah, sure.
You mentioned how when the pop-up window comes up, that you have to grab the corner and expand it so that you can see the buttons.
Yeah.
Another way to do that is there's 3 buttons on the top left of the window. And now I'm not familiar with Windows, but on a Macintosh, the 3rd button in, the green one, if you click on that, it'll maximize that and make it the whole. It'll take over the whole screen. And that will also.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Any way that you can get the screen to get bigger. I want to also piggyback on that and say that that's only the case on a computer. If you're using Pathways on a tablet, it seems to be fine. So it's just when you use a pop-up window on a computer that it does it. And I think, Mark, from my experience, maybe you had a similar experience, it's pretty much universal across all the browsers that pop-up window comes up too small. So
yes,
yeah, it's pretty
That's
universal.
what I found.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So any questions about submitting your level to be approved? All right then. So to move on to the question that Lance asked is about how does your club get credit for your level? Okay. So for those of you who are maybe new to Toastmasters, who maybe are watching this video later or who are logged in now, there's your personal path in Pathways where you are going through the program and you are working on the projects to improve your speaking and leadership skills. Now, in addition to that, the clubs also have goals at the club level, and this is called the Distinguished Club Program. And part of the club goals is for individual members to achieve their individual goals. So each time a member gets a level and finishes a level, the club gets credit for that completion. And when a club gets enough credit, enough people who have completed levels, they get points and then they can win awards. So in order for the club to get credit for any individual in the club completing a level, there's another process on how to get the club credit. So what we had just talked about now is you getting personal access to your next level so that you can move on to the next level. And what we're going to move on to now is how the club gets credit for it. So this also involves moving on to Basecamp Manager too. So I'm going to kind of shift over to that in a second. So before we move on to Basecamp Manager, I've pretty much covered everything there is to know about a personal pathways experience. I'm just going to look at my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. No. So before I move on to the Basecamp Manager, are there any questions about your personal path through pathways and how you can move through the program and get yourself approved? Okay, then I will move on to Basecamp Manager, and if the questions do come up, that's fine, we can go back. Okay, so for Basecamp Managers, this is now where the president, secretary, or VPE will then go in to be able to help the member move through the program. Okay, so in order for the member to give a club credit for the path level that they just finished, the officer will go into the same place they've always gone to, which is Leadership Central and Club Central. And submit education awards. Okay, and I'm going to select Serena because she's your district director right now. So if Serena were to say to me, I finished up my level 2, I would go here to give her credit for the club. Okay. Now here's the tricky bit. Now this is both for the person who is submitting wanting to get their award, give their club credit for their award, and for the club officer, is that the club that gave the approval for finishing the level does not necessarily have to be the same club that gets credit for the level. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
How does that work?
So if you're in only one club, this is kind of an irrelevant task. I mean, you just basically tell the same officer who gave you credit to give, who gave you approval to give you credit. It's the same thing. But if you're in more than one club and you want to give one particular club the Distinguished Club Program credit, then what you'll need to do is to tell the club that you want to give it to that they're the ones to go in and do this particular process here. So they have to know. And then you have to tell your other club, especially if you ask them to approve your level, to tell them not to. So I find it's just easier that if you know which club you want to give credit to have them do both at the same time. But there are some situations, and I'm in this situation now, or it was just a little while ago, where I wasn't sure which club I wanted to give it to yet. And that I wanted to wait to see. I'd given a level 1 to one club, a level 2 to the other club, and I wasn't sure who would deliver my level 3 to. And I wanted to wait to see which club needed it more based on their DCP progress. And so I waited, but I wanted to move on to level 4. So I asked for the approval so I could move on and work on my level 4, but I held on to the credit. And in fact, you can hold on to all of your credits as you move through. You can submit them all at once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can submit them one club here, one club there. So they're completely different processes. But it's important to know that if you don't give explicit direction to your club, they may think that you're telling them also to give the club credit and to go into Club Central and do that. So if you don't want that, make sure that you let them know. Because once they've submitted this award, you can't change it. Okay? So you go into Club Central, you submit the education award. Okay, that way, the same way you do for all the other ones. But to go back and give approval for a completion, that's back in the same Basecamp area that we were looking at earlier. And if you are a president, VPE, or secretary, you can log in as a Basecamp manager. And when you log in, this is the button that you'll spend most of your time on, pending requests. And if there was anybody in my club who was waiting for an approval, they would be listed here. It would say who they are, what they're waiting for the approval for, and then on the right-hand side, it'll have a little X mark and a check mark. The X mark will be red, the check mark will be green. And when you click the check mark, it approves their level completion. Now, be very careful here because those symbols are very small and they're very close together. And if you hit the X accidentally, it takes quite a bit of effort to get back through it and get it back submitted. So I say, don't make that mistake. Just make sure you get the check mark and approve it.
Tammy, this is Lance.
Yeah.
Looking at that page on mine, I have my name, level 2 completion, but it looks like I could, I mean, the green and the check and the black X are there available. Can I approve myself?
Give it a go. You shouldn't be able to, but maybe you can. You shouldn't be able to, but it might let you. Lance is going to try it.
Yep, it seems to.
Good.
Well, let me submit and see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. I'm pretty sure that the second part about giving your club credit, you can't do that. It won't let you. It even says on the top that you can't. So that one will be a little bit.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will Toastmasters International ever have a way of linking the two systems? Or because it's kind of nice that we can manipulate it this way, especially if you're a member of multiple clubs. But I'm wondering if they have a goal of linking it together so it's just a one-step process.
I think so. I think what their goal is maybe not necessarily one button for both, but I think their goal is to have it all on the same page, so that you can do all of the management from one place. Yeah, but again, like I said, the two systems are completely separate and they only communicate with each other at certain points. So I think that will probably happen much later when they either do a complete overhaul of the connection systems, or they maybe make a third, page where they come together or something. But it's pretty far down the list, but I do think it's on the list for them to put that together at some point.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good question. And I think that by that point too, that it'll be used this way for enough time that most people want it to stay this way.
Yeah.
So it would be hard. Like if I had to submit, my level 1 for an award right when I completed it, that'd be tough because I wouldn't know sometimes who I want to give it to.
Right.
That would be a tough process. So I hope that they don't put it together. I think most people probably wouldn't want it to put it together.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, another thing. If you are a Basecamp manager and you hear from your member that they want you to approve a project and it doesn't show up here, ask them 2 questions. Ask them, are you sure that you had this club selected in your on your main page when you went through the project? And you can help them go back to that window. Here, go back here. You can help them go back to this window and just confirm that they have your club listed. Now, from what I understand, if they submitted it with another club in there, they have to go to the other club. Mark, is this what you understand too? I've never seen it actually happen in person, so I've only heard that if you submit it to one club and you try to switch clubs, it won't let the other clubs accept it. You still have to go to that officer of that club you submitted it to. I'm pretty sure.
I'm not a VPE, a president, or a secretary, so I'm not exactly sure how it works.
Okay. So if you are an officer of your club and you help them through this and you switch their club and it still doesn't show up, odds are it's showing up for the other club and they'll need to contact the other club. So that's one question to ask. The second question to ask is to double check that they actually submitted their level, because there's lots of buttons to push and it might be possible that they might not have clicked that last button. So if it doesn't show up and they maybe they're only a member of your club and no other club, and you're 100% sure that they tried to submit it to your club and it's not showing, and you're president, VP, or secretary, double check, go back into their project, their level, and just double check that they clicked it and that they submitted it. But if that doesn't work and they're still not listed, then I would call TI. And so for my last comment about a lot of this, the potential sticky bits during pathways is if what you're experiencing is not covered in this walkthrough, if it's something that through this walkthrough doesn't help, odds are it's a technical issue that myself or not, any of the other pathways assistants, we won't be able to help you with. So my suggestion is if it does happen that you can't get through something that's not, and it's not been covered here, is to call TI directly and have them walk you through it. They have access to the back end of your account, and so they can fix anything that's been misclicked or anything that maybe has, for some reason, got any data that got corrupted or any links that aren't working. So they can help you from the back end in a way that we can't help you as somebody who's helping you walk through the program. So this covers the basics of the program, everything you know, a little bit of the technology. But I encourage you that if there's anything beyond this that you need help with, the first thing to do is to call up Toastmasters and they will be able to help with most of their questions. All right, that covers everything. Do we have any last questions before we wrap up?
No.
Okay, very good. Appreciate everyone's time. If you were live or if you're watching this in the future, for taking the time to spend your time and learn more about pathways and how it can improve your path through the communication and leadership program that Toastmasters provides. Thank you very much, Tamala, and for all of you listening now live and in the future watching this off the website. Thank you, Tamala.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for attending tonight.
And if anyone's interested, in the bottom of the fourth, the Dodgers are ahead 2-0.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.